You're listening to KCAA Loma Linda, your CNBC news station. So expect the unexpected.
Thank you for joining in for this edition of Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali. I am Attorney Zulu Ali with the Justice Watch crew, Rosa Nunez, Michael Bilal Clark, and Dr. Akil Bashir. This week, like we do every week, we'll be talking about critical and important legal issues that are affecting our communities. This week, of course, we'll have open lines available at 909-792-5222 if you would like to chime in on our subject and our topic today. Our topic actually today is we'll be talking about the issue of black and minority leadership and its impact on the justice system. Later on this afternoon, we'll have a young man calling in and probably in about 20 minutes to talk to us about that topic. Yesterday, we actually had the Jury Reform Initiative Conference, where we actually had it's to kickstart our national campaign in order to try to promote jury reform nationwide as a mechanism to deal with the ever-increasing police misconduct as well as wrongful conviction issues that have been affecting our communities. And during the conference, of course, we had some really good questions from some individuals that actually sparked some discussions that I believe that we want to talk about today. And one of the reasons why, I think it's a really, really important issue where we talk about black and minority leadership and activism and how it really impacts our system and our justice system and just the things that are going on with the community in general. I think the reason why that's important is I believe that one of the things that has actually has frustrated me for a long period of time, and as we, like many individuals who are in the community trying to spark some sort of interest, is the fact that we don't have a lot of effective leadership in our communities, in my opinion. And what I mean by not having effective leadership in our communities is that we begin to start, it's like we talked about a revolution, a revolutionary without a revolution. It's like that sometimes we're more focused on the process than we are actually the prize. And that meaning that sometimes we have individuals that get too comfortable with the leadership role. And that basically they create their own monopoly in order to prevent other individuals from coming into their territory. And you've got leaders who are fighting with each other, unfortunately, over this whole issue of not necessarily how things should be done, but, stay out of my lane, so to speak. This is kind of what I'm doing, and this is what needs to be done as far as leadership is concerned. And I believe that it's counterproductive, and it's a counterproductive issue that has been plaguing our communities for a long period of time. And it's not my intention to use this as an opportunity to kind of bash on individuals who are actually leaders within our community. But I feel like that when you think about the leadership and the fact that we are not, and this is what I believe that leadership should be. And we talked about this before, Doc and Bilal, where we talked about the fact that we believe that leaders, that we should take an opportunity to train other individuals to take our place. The elders within the communities need to begin to start looking at younger individuals to come into their communities and try to take their place so that we can build not one leader, but groups of leaders.
That's right.
And what we do is we think that we put one individual in a leadership role, and that now I'm in this leadership role, I don't want nobody else to take my position. Because it's not supposed to be an occupation. It's supposed to be something that you're doing for the community, and you should be training other young men how to take on your spot. Right. And you can't really lead a group of individuals into doing something positive, if you only got one person that's actually responsible. The whole idea is that I'm going to try to train these young men to put themselves in a position so that we will have, an entire community of young men who are able to take on the leadership role. And in our communities, I always hear those questions. The first question is, what has he done for the black community? And the next question is, we need a leader. You know, and why would somebody say we need a leader? I mean, why can't everybody's supposed to be a leader, right? And we're always looking at what other individuals can do. The question isn't what other individuals can do or what has he done. It's what have I done, you know? And then what happens is that basically because we don't have the activism that we should have in our communities, we leave many of our leaders out there high and dry. That's why we see so many individuals that they go out and they try to do certain things, and then basically once they get into something, our communities don't come out and try to support what they're doing. You know, in other words, like I remember sometime back last year, there was a judge by the name of Olu Stevens, who was a judge actually in Kentucky, who had made an issue about the fact that these prosecutors had, he dismissed a panel of individuals because it wasn't reflective of the community. He felt like that this was not a fair and impartial jury because it wasn't a cross-section of the community. Now, he came under fire for doing that, and ultimately, as a judge, he was subjected by the Judicial Council of that state to being suspended for 90 days, I think without pay. Nobody knows about that case. Nobody went to the courthouse to protest what he was doing. Nobody did anything. And here this man does, he puts himself and his career on the line trying to fight for individuals and fight for their rights. And then he's basically, he suffers from it in the process without anybody, helping him. And that continues to be a problem in our communities, is that oftentimes you have individuals that go out there and they try to get people to come out and support their causes, but nobody really wants to come out and they don't want to support their causes. They want to sit back and allow people to go out and work and march and do things, and they sit back and they complain about it until they get in trouble themselves. And that's frustrating, that you have something like that going on. I mean, I know that we have our organization, the Stop and Frisk Academy, where we're trying to use it as an organization to try to deal with at-risk use, teach them how to deal with police encounters, and try to also teach them to motivate these young men. And you really don't get the type of support, or we don't get the type of support that we need. Nobody in our organization is asking for any kind of monetary support. We're just trying to ask for young men to come in there so we can help make a difference. And a lot of our organizations, when they get together, basically, they spend more time collecting money, having conferences, having banquets, and shining and getting on television and getting this notoriety, and there ain't nothing coming out of it. It's the same, other than the fact that they're getting this publicity, and they're not really helping no one within inside in the community.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? They're just basically just doing it. And then when you try to, as far as grassroots organizations are concerned, and trying to get these individuals inspired and motivated about helping and doing things positive, then it's difficult to even get people to come out and do anything like that. That's right. We got so many institutions and so many there's no reason it should be that way. Our leadership is muffled. They're not really making, there's no reason why we should have some of the ills and issues that we're having in our community. Sometimes we can't get people out to vote. We can't get people out to participate. We can't get nobody to do nothing unless it's something that affects them directly.
That's right.
It's just a shame. And that's the reason why. Only thing we can do is tell people how to pull their pants up. Right? That's our, that young people, it's about why they don't do the things that it's our fault that these kids are the way that they are today, Doc.
That's right.
We did that. You know what I mean? We didn't provide them with the type of leadership that they were supposed to. You can't blame the issues going on with the entire generation on that generation. We somewhere along the way, we lost it. You know what I mean? We lost it. And now we got young people who are out here, they're lost, and they're doing all these things, and we don't know how to get a hold of them because we allowed, in many cases, our women to raise them and haven't been there for them. You know what I mean? And so we left them there to raise them, and now we're sitting there talking about them without looking at ourselves and looking in the mirror. What did we do, and how did we get to this point, Doc?
Well, you drop a lot of weight there, Brother Ali. I agree with everything you said. And I think we've got to look at, number one, the historical definition of what we allowed to transpire with us, the fact that we have became volunteer victims, the fact that we have people promoting self over the unified constructive movement of our communities. You know, self-service, when you look at it, we've got to be real clear. Is it self-service or is it public service? You talked about leadership, and I really have to stress, leadership is temporary. Leadership you don't pick. Leadership picks you. And this is where we have went awry. We have had people step up to promote individual cause, their own personal cause, etc., when in actuality, the people determine the type of leadership that will lead them. Leadership is a process. And in that, when you build leadership, see, we have become so reactionary to respond with emotionalism that we are not strategic in our process. When you assume leadership because you're trying to move an infrastructure or a movement to accomplish certain goals that are going to get you there. And our ancestors clearly understood that we had to be collaborative driven in everything that we did. So all that we put together in terms of our leaders, they were driving us to a certain point. And in the process, if you build a structure to put leadership in place, that leadership will realize this role is temporary and might be in need for a day, a week, a month, a year, or whatever. But by nature, leadership is to be replaced. There is no if, buts, and ands about that. Leadership should not stay in power. What we have had in our community is a bunch of pimps and prostitutes that have took advantage of people that have been in need and marginalized people and said they will lead them to the promised land at the sake of sacrificing those people for their own beneficial needs. Where did that mindset come from? That mindset came from a perpetuated self-hate, but more importantly, that mindset came from us allowing our personal wants and needs to overshadow the collective needs of the communities that we say we serve. So it's a lot going on in that process, and this is a big one. And let me drop this. See, I have the right to criticize because of all the time and years and decades I put into this work trying to save my damn community. I love my community to the death, but at the same token, we don't criticize the community and criticize that leadership enough to call it out for what it is. When we've got people faking and shaking, even in the movement of the 60s, 70s, which defined where we were going, we had hypocritical people trying to destroy the movement and destroy the communities. We need to put those people on spot, on blast every time we see them, call them out for what they were and send them on their way in terms of where they need to go. But what do? We allow those individuals to fester. We allow those individuals to take hold and become pillars. We allow those people to define the responsibilities and the foundation of how we move. And lastly, when we talk about our youth, see, our youth are not as immature or unfocused as we think they are. Our youth can feel the travesty. They can feel the devastation. They can feel the misdirection that certain groups of elders have constituted on them. And that's why they have defined their own reality, which is a reality that unfortunately is a misdirected reality in so many cases. But at the same token, if they don't get the proper leadership guidance, understanding that is going to meet their needs, they are going to define the operational structure that they're going to move from. And that's what we see in our youth. One last point, Brother Ali, and you said it so well, our children are a reflection of us. Everything we see in our children, we have to take the ultimate blame for that because they are a reflection of what we have brought to the table. And if we see the destructive processes coming from our children that we don't like, we don't need to so much concentrate on them. We need to take a damn good look at ourselves and ask, what the hell have we done and what have we produced and why does it look like that? And we've got to change it.
Right. That's good. Well said, Doc. We're going to go to the phone now. I think we have our caller. Is this you, Marcus?
Yes, sir. This is me.
Yeah. Anyways,
Hey, Brother Marcus.
I'm doing just fine. Yeah, the reason I'm glad that you called in because I actually wanted to. You had actually sparked some interest yesterday at the conference where you had actually posed a question that I really wanted to talk about here today on the radio because I think it's a really important question, and I think it's a question, like you said, I think that there's a lot of people who are looking for the same answer that you're looking for. So I guess I kind of I can't really duplicate it, So I kind of want you to kind of ask me that question again that you asked us yesterday at the conference.
Yes, sir, most definitely. So the question that I posed to Mr. Ali, for all those that are listening in, is that I'm noticing that in this day and age, we live in a generation where there are many distractions, such as entertainment, many different artists, and for the future generations that are coming ahead or coming along, there seems to be this gap between generations in which the translation can get lost with this jury reform initiative. So the biggest question that I posed was, how do you bridge that generational gap so that this message does not get lost and we can continue to revolutionize what is going on in our communities and what's going on in,
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, that was a great question. And I think that, and again, just to kind of talk a little bit, I thought a little bit more about your question and how important it was and how it not only is limited to how to get across the issue with jury reform, the jury reform initiative, which is important. And obviously that's something that we kind of want to push across the country and obviously looking to younger individuals to actually get involved with the movement. Then the question comes, how it's even a bigger issue because there is clearly a significant generation gap. And how do we, and your question was, not only was the issue was how do we reach out to you, but also the question was, you posed, how do you guys reach to us? How do you really approach us? And there tends to be kind of this hesitancy as far as why the younger generation really wants to come to the older generation to ask for assistance and guidance. And I can see how, and again, I think that there's kind of that reluctancy because there tends to be automatically this whole idea that from my generation, dealing with your generation, there's kind of this immediate, lack of understanding our presumptions. We automatically have this presumption that your generation is disrespectful, especially in the way in which you approach us.
correct.
And oftentimes when you do that, I mean, basically, so you automatically have this perception from my generation. Your generation has this perception against us, and I feel like that one of the things is that when you're approaching us, and one of the things, I'll begin with what I think is the first issue. I'm going to begin with our hesitancy or our lack of trying to teach your generation about what needs to be done. I think that we need to reach across with you guys. And I want to ask your opinion of this. My opinion is that basically that we don't do enough to kind of pull you guys in and kind of teach you and mentor you. I was telling you a little bit about my background and the fact that when I grew up in a community where in every household there were men taking care of their children and taking care of the household and taking care of their families. And we had a lot of role models. And when I say role models, those were our role models. Our role models was the guy next door, the guy that worked at the local factory, or the guy who actually worked as a janitor or worked in education or worked in whatever they were doing on a daily basis.
Right.
But I believe that now that we are going and we're always trying to, we spend a lot of time trying to criticize public figures and the fact that they don't do enough for the community and the fact that they're not role models. Like we talked about, I remember Charles Barkley, who used to say, I'm not your role model. And we used to say, well, you are a role model, And so, our community are choosing, public figures in order to say that these individuals should be the people that are looked up to.
Right.
And I think that, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So when you said that you were asking for my opinion as far as my generation or the generations are coming along, I think the biggest thing that is hindering us to being able to making that step towards your generation is the fear concept. I mean, because ultimately, a lot of people in this generation are afraid of being criticized, judged, or to be honest with you, even afraid to take on that leadership role that you guys plan on giving us in the near future. So I guess what I would really like to understand is, or even for you, Mr. Ali, when you talked about your grandfather and how much he meant to you and how much you had that male role model figure, And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that when you were with your grandfather, there was no fear to ask your grandfather the question. There was no fear to be able to understand what the man was saying and how important your role as a leader is going to be to our community. And so I think the biggest thing for us is understanding how to get over that fear. And I believe that there's no generation other than your generation that knows how to get past that fear and being able to reach out. And so I guess the thing is that we're trying to learn how to get past our fear ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm just, I think, it goes back to what you were saying, that we, we always heard the saying where our generation, we kind of scared to step to the youth nowadays. I mean, we look at the youth. Sometimes we look at the youth, man, and I'm gonna tell you, and I've seen it happen on countless times, where, and I think it's the approach. How you approach certain youth. We'll see the youth that might not open the door for the sister that might come through the door, and you might try to give him the best spiel that you possibly can, without him firing back, because you might fire back because he think you checking him about something. And it's just the way you approach the situation. Whether it be walking down the street and you see a youth sagging their pants, come here, youngster, let me holler at you, pull up your pants and. I think that there's a fear amongst our generation as to how the individual is going to take it if we do approach them. And then on the flip side of it, you do have youth out there that want to, that want to be guided in the right direction and stuff like that, but they have to find the proper individuals that they can get that guidance from. And sometimes it's hard to find a good intellectual conversation, unless you go to some type of event, like we had this event, whether the youth come about and then they can find those individuals that are willing to, step forward and take them on and mentor them. I can remember a point in time when I was in a joint years ago, we had these youth that was coming through and we was trying to figure out how do we get to them. And so what we would do, we would bring them in and we would give them these titles. We would give them these positions, right? We'd say, okay, you're going to be the sergeant at arms over here. You're going to be, we're going to have you over here. You're going to be in charge of this over here. And what we found at that particular time, we gave them a positive task and put a title on it. And they excelled in it because they looked at it and they saw somebody that was interested in them enough to give them a role. And they stepped up to that role. And from that point on, those youth began to do positive things because someone saw an interest in them enough to give them a role and say, I know you're worth something. You can do better. You can be better. And because we know this, we're going to give you this. Come on. I want you to be on my side. I want you to be right here. I want you to be, I don't know what it is that you can give them, whether you're going to be my right-hand man or whatever it is. And they step up to those particular roles. But as long as we, like you say, we do need to find that common ground where we'll be able to communicate with each other.
Mm-hmm. And I think that communications obviously is the issue. I think that we have a difficult time in our communities communicating with each other. Mm-hmm. And because, I think that basically my generation, to be quite honest with you, although I didn't quite fear, there was somewhat of a fear factor there of the man because, I think that there was kind of, and I don't know whether it was physical fear, but I think that it was just a fear of just the whole idea of how you respected your elders.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a little bit different as far as the way, it wasn't necessarily not approaching them, but the manner in which you approached each other. And I think that our generation we're pretty, because communications now is a little bit different than it was during the time in which I was growing up. The people communicate a lot more, and when I say communicate a lot more, it's more, but it's different. The way in which we kind of have a dialogue between the generations. And so we don't reach out the way that we want to because basically when you talk about individuals from our particular generation, there tends to be, this kind of hard approach and an automatic softness of your generation, that the men that's coming up in this generation, you're not hard, you're not as responsible, you don't have respect, then you have all these things that are going out, the music, the movies, everything is is so contaminated with so much negative stuff, and that when you do talk to them, that some elders are actually even fearful of this particular generation. When I say this, the younger generation, and so I think that it requires communications can never be one way. Communications, that's why it's communications, because it's both ways. And so when we're communicating with each other, oftentimes one side is communicating and the other side isn't, because it's pride. The elders are too prideful to go out and try to grab people and try to talk to them on your level. And you guys feel a little bit different, because it's like, I don't want to talk to them because the way, we're always judging you. We're judging you by the way you dress. We're judging you by the way you act. We're judging you by the way you talk. And it's always saying, in our generation, we do this, and in your generation, you do that. You see what I mean?
Right.
So that begins to be, I think we have another caller, but I think that begins to be oftentimes the factors that are dealt with. We all know the answers. We all have people who want to talk, but we don't have people who want to listen. You see what I mean?
Right.
And so I think that kind of the issue.
But at the same token, the cub doesn't look to the lion and sit and listen to the lion. The cub watches the lion. It's the same thing with our young adults. See, we talk too much, but we don't produce. It is not what we say, it's what we do. And when you think about the process, it's not a process of equality. The young brothers shouldn't have, and the young sisters shouldn't have to come up to us and say, well, let's create some kind of conversation. We should be reaching back to them and be pulling them up. That's what eldership is about. That's what rites of passage is about. We have these moments, and we've got to start establishing, these movements. When you look at what the brothers are going through and what the sisters are going through, so many of them feel that we have not guided them. We have not taught them how to survive. We have not taught them how to navigate. We have not taught them how to be successful, but yet we want to flip the script and come back and tell them what they need to do. Why should they listen to us? Too many of us are living on past reputations and are armchair revolutionaries and are not putting in work. And these young brothers, I'm with them every day. I'm in these streets. I've been for 60 plus years. They want to see. They want a blueprint. Tell me what to do. That's the same thing the cub wants from the lion. Tell me what I need to do. I'm looking for your generalship. And so many of us elders, while some of us are doing outstanding things, you, Brother Ali, you, Brother Bilal, and there's many more out there, collectively, we are not doing enough. How the hell are we going to fear what we've produced?
Yeah, I know. It's just like, that's so true. I think that, when it comes to young men and dealing with young men, I'm always open personally to speaking to young men and doing, and you might be right. As far as young men wanting to kind of come out of their shell and kind of wanting to talk to other men, a lot of it has to do with some of the other problems that we have within our communities, in that a lot of times there aren't men in their lives. So young men are always looking for an opportunity to speak to other men and get an opportunity and figure it out. But we're so, because we live in a community that's a lot more fragmented than it was in the past, then it makes it a little bit more difficult to kind of identify who you're dealing with. When, for example, the street that I grew up on, it was everybody, it was a black household. Everybody on the street was from the same community. And so that was kind of the issue. Is that, can you have both of them at the same time? Or you, okay. All right. We have another call, so Marcus, just hold on and listen in. I'm actually going to take his call right now. Hello, caller.
Okay, good. Good evening, our Brother Zulu Ali. You guys on point again. But I think what the problem is, the kids aren't being taught positive peer pressure. See, they with their peers more than they with their parents. When it comes to mentoring ain't like once a week, once a month.
That's right.
You got to mentor 24/7, and if you really serious about, I'm not saying you, I'm talking about a person is really serious about their mentoring, their phone should be open, they got to get out there, just like the preacher's supposed to be helping the masses of the of the people. They just out there getting Learjets and more mansions and folks catching the bus to pay them money, and they supposed to be helping the disadvantaged. I just look at it like, I know all the youth that I talk to, I'm speaking to more and more and more of them. They really want to hear the truth. See, everybody's telling them about entertainment. We don't even call these entertainers. They could do more. We don't even have serious youth programs for these kids. Their activities is drive-bys and 40 ounce and lean now. They don't. They bored. These kids are bored. When I was coming up, they had a CETA program. Then they had summer jobs for 90% of these kids. They don't have nothing for. And then they point at them. What Dr. Insurance said, they are kids. How the hell, excuse me, how can you point your finger at a kid?
Teach.
And you help raise the kids. They are kids. These are our kids. We got to do a lot more. And calling out just the guys in the neighborhood that's out here faking and shaking. You got a lot of entertainers. I'm not saying what Jesse Jackson, a lot of stuff what he was doing was wrong. He wasn't really for the people, because we wouldn't have lost affirmative action. I go out here and I ask some of these supervisors on some of these construction sites, why y'all don't have no brothers out here? They get offended with me. I don't care, because I still ask them. You got all these here $20 jobs, $25 jobs. Got people sleeping around here, even in our neighborhoods. You don't tell me no young brother wants a job. Come on, be serious. We need to put pressure on those kind of organizations. You cannot tell me that black people don't know construction.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we just got to get more serious. We should pick it. We see these big places coming up. You can look. See, when they took out affirmative action, I know y'all know, they don't have to do nothing for us now. They don't have to do nothing.
That's right.
They can just hire a woman. They can hire a white woman. I ain't being racial. I'm just being real. They can hire a white woman. That'll take care of it. So you got a lot of kids that's around here. They hear us, but we ain't giving them the right answer. So we gotta be in their ear every day. We got to start, I'm trying to do something, but, my funds ain't there, but it's like they need a place they can go every day and get mentored.
You're right.
And not just in California, all over. It'll be a better place. Better place.
That's right.
But anyway, I think you guys are on point. I'm not jiving you guys. You guys are on point.
All right, thank you.
Excellent.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you very much.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, and he brought up a really good point. And the point that he's bringing up is that one thing that you're talking, the one thing that, and I'm sure that you can attest to this, Marcus. You can tell me if I'm wrong, if I am. But the one thing that turns kids off is the same thing that turns me off, and probably turns us off, is that we want to give people a regiment as to how they're to do things, but we don't want to teach them how to improve. So when you so basically every conversation turns into a lecture, as opposed to turning into, hey man, let's sit down and let me talk to you about, how I can help you move. Instead of just saying, how do I want to maintain things the way that they are? Because the first thing it begins with, the one thing it always begins with, the thing that's wrong with your generation is, and people are tired of hearing that. And then when you do give them some sort of like, back in the day we used to do this, and back in the day we used to do that. Whatever happened to this? Whatever happened to that? And then it's almost like we've just basically written you people off. And when I say you people, I'm talking about our youth, right?
Right.
And then when Sorry,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
What I wanted to do was I really wanted to build on that that idea that you just had, but it was absolutely perfect. And also the gentleman before that was just speaking on the phone was that he said that kids out here are looking for truth. To kind of build on that, it's not even necessary that they are looking for the full-blown truth. They are looking for an identity. Because it doesn't take much to know that you shouldn't be out there hurting other people. It doesn't take much to know that you shouldn't shoot the brother right next. But yet kids are doing it. And they know the truth. I feel like innately most of us know the truth, but we have lost our identity. We have lost who we are. And so when you speak about when the elders give us lectures or tell us what's going wrong, I think what is the actual corrective solution is telling us our legacy, telling us who we are.
That's right.
Yeah.
Teach.
I feel like when we lost the whole concept of who we are as a people, as a culture, that's when everything else became lost. You can't, and this is just me trying to put a little example. You don't have to tell an Asian or a Chinese kid their legacy because of their family heritage. It goes on from generation to generation, which is why they're able to do the things that they do as far as their culture is concerned. But yet when it comes to our culture's scripts, papers, everything is lost at a certain point. Even the fathers in our households are lost. Mothers are forced to try to build up the self-esteem of a young man, but it's not the same as coming from a man.
Right.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it's the identity telling us who we are, telling us our legacy, telling us what's important to what we need to be and what we should be is, I think, the biggest solution that we can probably ever need as a generation.
But I think that when you look back at our community, you see how there is a lot of single parent households. And you don't see the father around, or you don't see the father in the home, whether he's dead, whether he's in jail, whether he's just a deadbeat dad. And I can remember at one particular time trying to go out to these schools and trying to speak to the youth before I even got my nonprofit started. And I was shot down at every corner, and I would actually go out to the principal and put my pitch on. I just want to come in and talk. I'm not asking for no money. When I finally did get into one school and I questioned the kids and went along to question who your role model was, none of them really said their dad. None of them really said their moms. It was always that person. Okay, I idolized Michael Jordan or whoever it was at that particular time that they idolized. But the thing about it wasn't the individual that they can idolize like they did, because somebody that sits at home that can tell them about life in general and how to survive these streets and how to grow up and be productive in society. It was always that person that they seen, across the TV screen, and that was, and the thing about it was I had to learn how to approach them. In that process, I had to learn how to approach him. And I realized that at that particular time, I had to put myself in a role and say, look, be more of a teacher to them. I had to step in the role of fathers when fathers wasn't around, when big brothers wasn't around. And so the thing about it is this: if they have no role model, if they have no role model or someone that they can look up to, then you're correct. They don't have no identity. They're looking for their identity, and the only identity they can find is grasping onto this entertainment or this basketball player. But it only teaches them one aspect of it. It don't teach you, they can see them and they can bounce that ball and make money all day. But what is it teaching them about manhood?
Right.
So it goes back to we have a job, and that was one of the reasons why I started the youth mentoring program, because I realized that there was a dire need for young black men out there to be able to educate these youth growing up, because we losing this battle.
Right.
But one of our biggest problems, Bilal, and you're spot on, and I think Brother Mike might agree with this. Look, at the end of the day, we have got to work with our youth on their normal and not our normal. We go in with our concepts and our thinking process, et cetera. Our youth are at a whole different introspect. They're doing things totally different than when we did them. You look to the past to guide the future, and that's what the past does for you. So we have really got to be on the ground, and in order to understand the normality of our youth, we have got to be on the ground with them. We're missing in action. We're missing in the process. Now, for our youth, your job is to hold hold us accountable. See, you can't fear us. As a young lion, you have got to tell us what you need and how to get you there. And then you got to try to select those people that you can get you there. One of the major things of that bridge or that gap you're talking about, most young adults feel the lack of inclusion. They don't feel they're part of the decisionary making process of what goes on in our community. And when you're excluded, and this is not locally, this is a national concept. When you're excluded from the process, you design your own process, and I think unfortunately that's what we see going on. So we're real quickly, rites of passage. You got 5 rites of passage in the African community, and people of color, if you look at it, the indigenous communities, etc., we have the circle of elder, we have the rites of passage, we have the rites of eldership. I can go on and on and on. As the young brother was talking about, some of these things need to be reinstilled, but we have to make that connection first. So we both, as elders, got work to do, and as you, as young adults, got work to do. I would put more of the onus on us, though, because we are elders, and it is our job to teach you how to replace us.
And oftentimes, I think, Marcus, is that basically we live in a society that, you have a lot of, positive male role models, so to speak, that are, our culture has always been under attack. And it's been under attack from the perspective that whenever you have the most positive influences in our community, there tends to always be this continuing attempt to attack their legacy. And so, there was a time I remember where we, from the inner city perspective, we were trying to take things back, and even our entertainers. I mean, the early hip hop culture was really a culture that was driven by trying to be culturally sensitive and culturally conscious and aware of what was going on. I mean, you look at the time period of when you're talking about, Eric B. and Rakim, when you're talking about KRS-One, when you're talking about, Brand Nubian, when you're talking about a lot of these groups that were coming up that were really, and even cinema, the Malcolm X, the Spike Lee movies, Public Enemy. I mean, this was all really driven by a positive idea of what it's like to be someone from our community. Somewhere along the way, where you began to start seeing that these individuals now, I mean, people like KRS-One, Public Enemy, Brand Nubian, they couldn't even get a record deal. You can't even get into the cinema whenever you have the money and the backing that you need in order to make certain movies. I mean, so, it was really an opportunity for us to try to take our community back. But anyway, they began to start, red lighting projects and artists that basically were not positive. And most of the newer generation, because music is not new. I mean, we always talk about what's going on. Music was the same way when I was growing up. I mean, music was important, cinema was important. Those things were really important. And now cinema and music is more important because it's all over the place. I mean, you don't have to, when I was a young man, you had to go to the record store and buy a 45, or you'd have to listen to it on the radio show. And sometimes you didn't even have those radio shows that even had the type of music that we really wanted to listen to. Nowadays, everybody's got a mic. I mean, not a mic, but they got an earphone in their ear, and they're listening to this stuff. And I think that we kind of minimize the importance of popular culture, of music, of cinema, of all the things that you guys are exposed to, and we're competing with that type of exposure, because now it's 24/7. I mean, 24/7 you are exposed to those types of things, and there is an ongoing effort to try to attack any black man who is doing something positive. It's difficult, before you called, Marcus, I was talking about the judge. I think we talked about a little bit about at the conference, where there's a judge in Kentucky named Olu Stevens, who actually dismissed a jury of 41 individuals because it was not a cross-cultural, a cross-section of the community. It was pretty much an entire white jury, and I think there might have been one person. Well, he ultimately got suspended from the bench for 90 days. You see what I mean? And so, and then, when that happened, I was always upset. I actually posted it on Facebook and when it happened last year, but nobody came to his defense. Nobody came out and tried to go out. I mean, there should have been picket signs outside of that courthouse and trying to support him. So here you got a man that put his career on the line, and nobody came to his defense, you know. And those are the type of men, and they try to destroy his legacy. They said he was involved in some sort of ethical violation when he wasn't doing nothing but trying to, you know, get himself involved in you know, doing something that is of justice. And he's not recognized for doing that, and sometimes we don't recognize those types of individuals. But I see, you know, where you're coming from. I do believe that there is this, you know, although, you know, you're right, you guys, it is an issue of identity, and we've lost that in so many different ways. And not only have you know, our young men have lost it, but we've lost it. We're not conveying it and doing it in a way and maintaining ourselves and being strong in order so that we can give you that kind of example. I mean, you have an entire community that, you know, the backbone of our community is the woman. And, you know, and it's been for a long time. You know what I mean? And so you got the woman who is basically being the backbone of the community, and they're raising these young men. And you know, when you got that type of stuff going on where you have men who aren't taking care of the family the way that they should, then young men become, you know, kind of confused. And there's nothing like that. And then sometimes when the men are in the house, sometimes they're not strong. They're seeing something that they shouldn't see. And so, you know, what we should be doing is we should be focusing on, if we really want to make our next generation a positive, strong generation and have these men doing the things that they should be doing, we have to be strong. We have to show you the way, and we have to stop being so selfish about what's important to us. So, you know, I think our generation needs to stand up and look in a mirror and apologize to you, the younger generation, because our generation has failed you in so many different ways, as the doc always talks about. We have failed you guys.
That's right.
And you know, we spend all of our time talking about how bad you guys are, but you know, we have to take some ownership of what's going on in your generation. You know, and we need to start reaching and trying to figure out ways that we can, instead of criticizing you, being the best example that we can be for you guys.
That's right.
And also when we talk about, you know, trying to move forward, I mean, we always, you know, there's no solutions. You guys are looking for solutions. You know, I mean, we're still dealing with, you know, and I don't know, Marcus, if you sometimes when you look at YouTube and you look at a Malcolm speech, or you look at a Dr. Martin Luther King speech, as we were talking about yesterday, I mean, they seem like they could have been done yesterday.
Right, exactly.
And we're not moving. And I'm sure that people are saying, okay, we're going out here, we're marching, and we're getting the same results like you guys. I mean, what do we need to do? I mean, you guys were getting beat, and we're getting beat. What do we need to do? You know, and I can see how you guys are looking for answers, and you guys are smart, and we just need to give you at least what we have, and give you the encouragement to build on to what we've established. And you know, you look and you think. I was thinking the other day, I want you to tell me what national African American leader do we have in the United States? Leaders, because I don't like the word leader, because all you guys, we need to teach all of you how to be leaders. Instead of teaching one person to be a leader, we need to have an entire community of leaders. But I want you to tell me, what national leader do we have under the age of 35 that you can recognize? You know, Dr. King and Malcolm were both. Dr. King passed away, was assassinated when he was 38 years old.
Right.
Malcolm was what, 45? And all of what they did was inside of.
Go ahead.
What'd you say?
No.
It was inside of 38 years of his life. You know what I mean? These were not older men. They actually, Martin was handpicked. Dr. King was handpicked to lead. You know what I mean? Why aren't we picking some of these younger men to groom men, not man, but men to groom and to move forward? And we should. But for what you're saying in your generation, is that basically I can't speak to you and tell your generation exactly what to do, but I want to speak to both generations and tell them that we need to start dialoguing with each other. We need to start dealing with each other and teaching each other and trying to put the community and stop being we're I, and since we're so selfish, we're teaching the generation to be selfish. Yeah. And so, when it's like we're teaching the generation how to do things that's going to benefit you, instead of trying to teach a generation of how to do things to benefit the community as a whole. And that's where we need to start moving, is to have a more of a communal conversation. But everybody's out for themselves. Everybody's selfish, and we're not really having the village. Villages aren't raising children the way that they used to.
Yeah, real quick for the listening audience, if you wish to chime in on these conversations that we have every Sunday from 5 to 6, you can call in at 909-792-5222. Also, you can email us at justicewatchradio@gmail.com. You can look us up on Facebook at Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali, as well as you can look up on the website at justicewatchradio.com to look at some of the videos and stuff that we have posted there, as well as Justice Watch Radio with Zulu Ali on YouTube.
Yeah. So anyway, so what are your thoughts, Marcus? I know we gave you an earful in a short period of time.
No, I'm loving it. To be honest with you, as we keep talking, I feel like I'm dialing deeper into what can happen for this generation. And I think I'm coming down to one simple concept for this generation, which is it's not even so much that there needs to be several solutions that we need to hear or that we even need to invoke in the younger generation. It's learning how to not be afraid. Because back then, when we did have the Malcolm X, when we did have the Martin Luther King, I'm sure there were a bunch of youth that were behind them and that were willing to go that extra mile for the idea, the concept of either being free or just helping out our community. It was because we saw men that had no fear. We saw women that had no fear to get on the bus and tell her mind and her piece. And I think what happened to this generation, to my generation specifically, I would say is that now we see that there are people that are in these prestigious positions and are higher statures that are being taken down, and we are afraid of being taken down or reaching those pinnacles. Because what we can see is, as far as entertainers, we can, like, for example, I'll use Kendrick Lamar because I do listen to this man quite a bit, is that if this man today gave out the greatest album that he has done in past time, but the next thing we hear on the news is that he had an altercation at a hotel or a club or something else that he was at, next thing that we see is the media tearing that image down, and that's what we are afraid of, is being torn down. So it's a lot easier for us to want to pick up a basketball because we're not as scrutinized doing that versus, in your case, Mr. Ali, I'll use your stature, being the man that you are. If anything was to happen, knock on wood, anything was to happen to you personally, we now have another person that is taking out as far as a prestigious position, and now we're afraid of taking that position that you have held because something happened to you.
Right.
So we are, so more or less, we want to know how not to be afraid, how to actually stand up and believe in something, how to push towards something,
Excellent
and just
point.
merely not being afraid.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, that's what I said. I mean, it's just like, we see that what happened to Barack Obama.
Exactly.
That basically you had a guy that was almost flawless, actually. But but they did everything they could while he was in office and even since he has left office to try to destroy his legacy. And that's it comes with the territory. As an African American, it comes with the territory. If you're doing something that's positive, then you're going to be in their sights. They're going to come after you, and there's no question about that. You just have to have our community to kind of back that up and try to stand behind these individuals when they go after them. I mean, and that's an effort. I mean, they're going to go after their legacies, and that's the only thing. Just with Barack Obama, everything that they're doing right now is to dismantle everything that he built, and that's kind of like their MO. I mean, and I go through it every day as an attorney. I mean, I'm fighting left and right. I mean, I'm they throwing left jabs and
Hand grenades.
and hand grenades and everything else, man. I mean, there's things literally that other attorneys have gotten away with that they come after me for, so that I can understand it. But unfortunately, man, we ran out of time. And Marcus, I got to have you back, man, because you actually laid that out very well. And I hope that I can get you to call in again or even come into the studio so we can talk a little bit more. You down with that? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Young brother.
And to our listening audience and online as well, on behalf of the Justice Watch crew, Rosa Nunez, Michael Bilal Clark, and Dr. Akil Bashir, thank you for tuning in. And until next week, we'll see you at the same time, same place, same channel.
Your NBC Sports Radio update starts now.
Running out of time, I'm Jeff Nathanson. Major League Baseball, one game yet to be played tonight. It's the Cubs and the Cardinals in St. Louis. So far, they have not been able to start due to rain in St. Louis. They're so far an hour behind schedule. No official word on what may happen next, but you don't start too many games at this hour. We will see what happens in this one, but if not, they'll have to make up that game later. The Cubs